less stress, more time, more money. Welcome to the Cash Flow Contractor. Short.
I don't have good banter. I'm the bantee, not the banter. Khalil wanted me to start this one, and I'm at a loss. Now, today, in this short episode, I want to talk about something that costs you nothing that can make you millions.
An idea.
An idea and an action. You've got to do something, as with all ideas.
Yeah.
And that's checklists.
So you're talking about the thing that I have for an employee that's got 28 items on it that tells them exactly how to do something and make sure I get exactly the results I want?
Well, I'm not talking about that. I got a story. A client has crews that go out, 3-man crews, and go out and do jobs, typically take a day. And I was talking to him a month or so ago, and he was frustrated because he'd sent a crew out, and they were about an hour away, and they came back later in the day and hadn't done anything. And the reason was they were going to a new construction home, and there was no electricity. So my client's complaining to me, and I'm real smugly waiting until he quits talking and thinking, I'm going to say, get a generator. And anyway, so he finished, and I said, get a generator. He goes, we got a generator. I said, well, what's the problem? Well, they forgot to take any gas. Okay, well, you can think of some options like fill a little 2-quart gas can at a gas station or something like that, or but they didn't have a gas can because they forgot that too. So they drove all the way back, and as a result, basically lost an entire day of production. And as I frequently point out, they didn't just lose the expense that they put out that day. They lost the job they didn't do tomorrow because they're doing this one.
Exactly.
Right? And so what we did was put in a checklist. And we knew it was a really official checklist because we laminated it.
There you go.
Right? So nobody listening here doesn't know what a checklist is. Everybody knows what a checklist is. But I've worked with enough companies to realize that very, very few companies use checklists. And I think one of the reasons for that is that they tend to overcomplicate things. So in a definition, the way you start talking your 28 steps, a checklist is not an itemized list of how to do the job.
It's not a how-to.
It's not a how-to. And one of the worst things you can do with a checklist is become too detailed. What it is a reminder of stuff that everybody already knows, right? So, for example, you can have a checklist, maybe a maximum of 10 items. 5 is better, 7 is okay. But maybe you can have a checklist that, do we have the address and contact information of where we're going? Do we know what we're doing? Do we have the materials? Do we have the tools? And then do we have fuel, right? And maybe throw safety in there, safety equipment. But 4, 5, 6 things. And the way you use a checklist is, this guy had a crew of 3. You got 2 guys, you got 5 guys. But right before you leave, you stand together and say, do we have the address and contact information of where we're going? Yes or no? Do we have safety equipment? I forget exactly what my list was, just out of my head. Do we have the materials? Well, you don't necessarily have to count everything, but you got 5 sets of eyeballs, 4 sets of eyeballs looking on the truck to see, do you have the materials, the parts and materials that you need? Do we have the tools that we need? And of course, we can get into how to make it easy to see if you have the tools. That's, laying out how you lay out your vehicles and things. But do we have the tools? Yes or no? 3, 4, 5 guys all look at each other and nod, yes, we do. Well, the chance of somebody saying, hey, the shovel's not on the truck, or the impactor, or the injector, or whatever it is, isn't on the truck, it just gives you an opportunity. And this is what airline pilots do. Guy's got 20,000 hours. That Sullenberger who landed in the Hudson River here a couple of years ago, 20,000 hours. They ran a checklist before they landed in the river, right? I mean, but those guys have done that, 20,000 hours actually doing it, I don't know how many countless hours they have in simulators practicing to do it.
Oh, yeah.
And they still pull out a checklist.
I mean,
Right.
that's one of my friends flies, fighter pilot. He does for every hour in the air, 7 hours of chair flights at
Right.
his dining room table.
Well, I
closing his
guarantee he
eyes.
runs a checklist too, even if
Oh,
he's
yeah.
got a bomb underneath and they
Oh,
got to
yeah.
get going because it's a real deal.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So checklists, I encourage people just to think about that. And it is not obvious. I read a book which has prompted me to talk about it today called the Checklist Manifesto by a guy with an Indian name. I'm sorry, I can't remember. It's a New York Times bestseller. It's wonderful. But he was a surgeon, is a surgeon. And anyway, people might have heard about this, but around the turn of the century, the 2020 or the 2000, that century,
Yeah.
they were suffering all kinds of maladies. Well, not a malady, but problems with operations, from infections from needles to leaving a sponge inside the person to cutting off the wrong leg or something like that. Those are all kind of big things, but also not having the right kind of blood available if there was some event and they
Sure.
needed to, just all these things. And so the author of the book actually went to Boeing, the aircraft manufacturer, learned the history of checklists, which did begin in World War II with the aircraft industry. And actually, it's a really interesting story. The B-17 was the bomber that was used in Europe and actually played a big part in winning World War II. Well, Boeing had made the B-17, had all the brass out, and it had every attribute. It could haul more, go faster, fly farther, and all this. Well, the big brass come out to watch it take off. It takes off, goes to about 400 feet in the air, turns left, crashes, and kills everybody. They had forgotten to pull a pin out of an elevator lock, which is just a little metal pin that keeps the rudder and elevators in the back from flopping in the breeze. Just forgot to pull it out. Simple. So Boeing went, that's really kind of the origin of checklists. And of course, airlines and pilots everywhere understand them
religiously.
completely. I've done that a million times. Yeah, but check, right? They started doing that in operating rooms, and it was hard to adapt because evidently surgeons, a lot of them are kind of prima
Stuck
donna
up.
jerks,
Yeah.
you know. But part of the thing they had to do was what I said. Everybody on the surgery team introduces themselves, says yes, yes, yes on each checklist item. Do we have the blood? Do we have the antibodies? Do we have the right anesthesia? Check, check, check. Anything special to know about this patient? All the people have to say it. And 1 out of 1,000 say, well, no, we don't have the blood that's necessary. We got the wrong blood type. Oh, maybe that saved somebody's life. Maybe it wouldn't have mattered, right? But that's the point, is simple things. And writing a checklist kind of evolves. I just listed off some things. Do we have the address? Do we have the materials? Do we have the safety equipment? Do we know what the job is? But start with something really simple and have your folks, before they begin a task, this can be in a plant before you fire up a machine, or it can be a contractor before he sends somebody out on the job. Do they just do those 5 things?
Yeah. I think the problem or the obstacle that people could run into is getting too detailed, like you mentioned, and just focus on the critical parts. What are the most critical things to a successful job?
And you might add one or take one off when you realize that. And that's a great point. I mean, that's one of my...
That's the biggest danger.
It's one of the biggest dangers. The other biggest danger is they don't do it.
Sure.
And the reason they don't do it is, I've done this a million times, but they wound up at that job in my example without freaking gas for the generator. And it basically cost them a day, three guys a day,
Yeah.
plus the job that they didn't do the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So it requires you as the boss to have a checklist that says, did they do the checklist? And if you laminate it, they can check it off. But in this case, we haven't talked about it recently, so I'm sure it's still true. But he hasn't had that
Issue
kind
again.
of incident at all. And that, oh my gosh, the saying, for one of a nail a shoe was lost, for one of a shoe a horse was lost, one of a horse a knight was lost, for one of a knight the battle was lost, and for the one of the battle the kingdom was lost. It started with a nail. That's exactly, I mean, people just think it's so non-consequential that they don't do it. But it costs you virtually nothing to create a checklist
Yeah.
and do it.
And I think the funny thing is, like, you can have these checklists run through over and over, and people not understand why. And sometimes it does take that example of we forgot the gas.
So that's the best thing that can happen to you is old James over there goes, "Hey man, aren't we going to need a compressor on this job?" Good catch.
Good catch.
You know, and you won't realize how much money you have to do the mental exercise. But okay, you just loaded it up. But you might have just saved yourself tens of thousands of dollars.
Exactly. And when that happens, you need to bring it up at your next team meeting, whatever. Hey guys, we almost forgot the compressor or the gas or whatever was on the checklist, or we did forget that.
Right.
And here's why we have the checklist. And now there's a mental note in their mind. Next time they see that checklist, they know exactly why we're running through that exact piece.
And it's fun. I have people who agree with checklists tend to want to immediately digitize them, and I don't have a problem with that. But let's not you can do it with a laminated piece of paper.
Well, and ideally, if you're only focused on the critical things, it's even a mental checklist. Obviously, have it written down, but what if it was so simple, 1, 2, 3, that everybody could memorize it?
No.
Okay.
No. That's the whole. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
The whole point. Is the surgeons made the point they've done tens of thousands of surgeries. They know exactly what to do, but they didn't.
Sure. No, I agree that it should be written down, but it should also be so easy.
Oh, yeah.
That we have it
you
memorized.
can memorize it.
Yeah.
But you have to look at it. And the second part, I hope I made this important or clear, is if it's just you, then it's just you. But if you've got 4 people, everybody, you look and ask everybody, right, and they're taking responsibility, right? If 5 people said right and you get there and it didn't, you've got 5 people that blew it. Yeah. And I'm not after assigning blame, but I'm after not letting that happen again.
Yeah,
so
for sure. Well, this is a good one. Checklist.
Cost you nothing, make you millions, and you maybe
save you millions.
Save
maybe.
you. Yeah, well,
It'll make you, but it'll also
saves
save you.
But it makes you that job that you didn't do because you blew it today.
That's true.
It's
true.
another job.
Yeah.
So both ways. Yeah.
Checklists.
Yeah.
If you don't have them, start creating them. Different than your systems. They're not exhaustive. They're critical.
Right.
Thanks for listening to The Cash Flow Contractor. Check out our website in the show notes or visit thecashflowcontractor.com.